All right, let's talk about one of the biggest, most tempting ideas in the world of software development. I'm talking about using just one language, JavaScript, to build absolutely everything, the entire application, from server to browser. It's a huge promise, but it's also a high-stakes gamble, a gamble on pure speed. I mean, just think about it. One language to rule them all, right? The dream is a single team speaking a single language with a single way of thinking about problems. It's kind of like the holy grail for developers, this idea that you can just erase the line between the front end and the back end. But as you can probably guess, it's not quite that simple. And that really gets to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? This is the big question. You get this incredible, almost unbelievable speed, but in return, you have to be incredibly disciplined. Without that discipline, the whole thing can fall apart. So we have to ask, is that speed demon you've unleashed worth the heavy price of keeping it on a leash? All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the big promise of using just one language. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of performance, speed versus raw power. After that, we'll explore the wild world of the JavaScript ecosystem, freedom versus risk. We'll wrap up with a playbook for making this work in the real world and deliver our final strategic verdict. Okay, first things first. Why are so many companies jumping on this bandwagon? Let me tell you, it's not really about how pretty the code is. It comes down to one thing, a single metric that businesses are obsessed with: organizational velocity. In other words, pure, unadulterated speed. So, how does this even work? Well, the magic trick behind all of this has a fancy name: isomorphic JavaScript. But don't let the name intimidate you. The idea is actually pretty simple. It just means the exact same JavaScript code can run on the server and in the user's browser. That's the whole game. It's what bridges that huge traditional gap between the back end and the front end. And this, right here, shows you exactly why that matters so much. Think about the old way, right? You've got a back-end team speaking Java and a front-end team speaking JavaScript. Your developers basically become translators, spending half their time just negotiating how data should be formatted. It's slow, it's painful. Now contrast that with the unified JavaScript world. Suddenly, everyone's speaking the same language. Data just flows seamlessly from the database all the way to the screen. The amount of mental energy you save is just massive, and that translates directly into speed. Okay, so it's definitely faster for your teams, but what about the app itself? Is it actually faster for the user? To answer that, we have to get technical and talk about Node.js, the engine that makes this whole full-stack JavaScript thing go. So, at the very core of Node.js is something called the single-threaded event loop. Now, what does that mean? Well, instead of hiring a new worker for every single customer that walks in the door, which is what traditional servers do, Node has one super fast worker that juggles everybody's requests at once. This is amazing for simple tasks like fetching data. But, and this is a huge but, it's also its greatest weakness. It's Achilles' heel. If that one worker gets stuck on a really hard math problem, everyone else has to wait. The entire shop just grinds to a halt. And when you put them side by side, these trade-offs just pop right out at you. Look at I/O performance, reading files, talking to databases. Node.js is an absolute rock star. But then you look at CPU performance, the heavy lifting, and Java's multi-threaded approach just dominates. It's not even close. Oh, and check out that startup time. Node is lightning fast to get going, which is a massive deal for things like serverless functions, where you can't afford to wait around for a server to warm up. This chart really nails the whole story. We call it the performance crossover. See, for your everyday stuff like an API that's just grabbing data, Node.js is the king. It's way out in front. But look what happens when the work gets harder. As soon as you introduce complex logic or really heavy number crunching, Java just takes over and leaves Node in the dust. So the most important question you have to ask yourself is, what kind of work will my application actually be doing? All right, let's switch gears from pure performance to the world that surrounds JavaScript, its ecosystem. A language is nothing without its community and tools. And for JavaScript, that means NPM. And let me tell you, NPM is the ultimate double-edged sword. Just take a second to look at that number. Over 2 million packages. That's not a typo. It's the biggest software library on Earth, by a long shot. It's like having an infinite box of Legos. No matter what problem you're trying to solve, chances are someone has already built a piece for it, and you can just snap it into your project in seconds. This is a massive, massive speed boost. And if you need some perspective on just how huge that is, well, here you go. NPM doesn't just beat its rivals like Java's Maven or .NET's NuGet, it completely dwarfs them. It's not even in the same league.
What that gives you is just an insane amount of choice and instant access to the latest and greatest tools for any new technology that comes out. But, and here comes the other edge of that sword. With all that freedom, you have to pay what's called the maintenance tax. First, things break all the time. The ecosystem moves so fast that libraries are constantly changing. Second, you get what we call dependency hell. You might install 10 packages, but those 10 packages depend on 100 others, which depend on 1,000 more. Before you know it, you've got this massive, invisible web of code in your project. And finally, security. An ecosystem that big and open is a huge, juicy target for hackers. It's a massive security risk you have to manage. So you're probably thinking, wow, that sounds kind of chaotic and risky. And it can be. So how on earth do huge companies like Netflix or Airbnb manage this? Well, they don't just wing it. They follow a very specific playbook, one built on teaming that chaos with serious discipline and really smart architecture.
And rule number 1 in that playbook, the absolute non-negotiable starting point is TypeScript. Seriously, at this point, it's not even a choice anymore. Think of it as a safety net for your code. It adds a layer of strictness to JavaScript that catches a ton of stupid mistakes before they ever make it to your users. And if you need proof, just look at this quote from Airbnb. They figured out that almost 40% of their bugs could have been prevented just by using TypeScript. I mean, that's an absolutely mind-blowing return on your investment. Okay, so what about that single-thread problem we talked about, the one worker getting stuck? The playbook has an answer for that too. It's called offloading. Here's how it works. A request comes in. If it's something simple, the main worker handles it. But if it's a really heavy, complicated job, you don't give it to your main worker. No way. You pass it off to a specialist, either a background worker or a totally separate service that's built for heavy lifting. Maybe that service is even written in Java. This way, your main guy is always free to greet new customers at the door, and one person's giant complex order doesn't bring the whole system to a standstill. All right, we've covered a lot of grounds: the speed, the performance trade-offs, the massive ecosystem, the risks, and the playbook to manage it all. So let's bring it home. What's the final verdict here? How do you actually decide if this is the right path for your project? So here's your checklist. You should seriously consider going all in on JavaScript if, number 1, getting your product to market as fast as humanly possible is your main goal. Number 2, your app's main job is shuffling data around. APIs, real-time chats, that sort of thing. Number 3, you want to build a single, flexible team that can work on anything. And maybe most importantly, number 4, you are absolutely 100% committed to enforcing the discipline that things like TypeScript require. If all those are a yes, then you're making a smart bet on velocity. But what about the other side of the coin? When should you stick with the tried and true platforms like Java or .NET? Well, you'll want to go that route if your application lives and dies by heavy computation. Think financial modeling or scientific analysis. Or if you care more about rock-solid stability for the next 10 years than you do about shipping a new feature next Tuesday. And finally, if you're in a highly regulated field where you just can't afford the risk of a massive open ecosystem. But you know what? For a lot of modern companies, the answer isn't this or that, it's both. The future is really hybrid. You see this pattern a lot. A super fast Node.js layer sits at the front door, handling all the incoming traffic and talking to users. But behind the scenes, it acts like a conductor, orchestrating a bunch of powerful specialized services written in Java or Go or Python, whatever is the absolute best tool for that specific job. It's a way to truly get the best of both worlds. And that really leaves us with one simple but powerful question you need to ask yourself. Because choosing your technology is really about choosing your strategy. It's about aligning your code with your business. So the question is this: is what you're building a sprint or is it a marathon? Once you answer that, the right choice of tools becomes a whole lot clearer.